Hi everyone, here again with Andy from SixProg, tackling another topic relevant to contractors, freelancers. And the one we wanted to talk about today is reasons for and against long contracts durations. So, yeah, Andy, first of all, what are your thoughts on this one?
It's an interesting one because there's both a regulatory piece around this called IR35 that can come into play. And then there's the very human piece around being happy that you are, I'll use the word stuck or fixed in a job for a long period of time, because quite naturally our outgoings are quite often fixed and tied into quite long durations, like mortgages, for example.
Yeah.
But look, you've done more than this than me. What's your initial reaction to somebody offering you a good, what should we say, 36-month contract?
That is a long one. I've never been offered one that duration, but more commonly I think the longest is probably 6 months, 9 months with a very good chance of extension is how it's normally positioned, which basically is just like a rolling, employment effectively. And I think you've got to look at it from the contractor's perspective as well as the client's perspective. And you're right to mention things like the outgoings, because that's all about security is ultimately what that's about. So the contractor might find that quite appealing because there is a perceived notion of security with a 6-month contract, let's say. But I say perceived because the reality is that you can often be dismissed at most in a month, if not shorter. I've seen quite a lot of contracts that have a 1 week notice period. And many clients can just say, actually, we're done with you right now. We don't need you next week, and effectively serve the notice immediately. So it is a perceived notion of security, but I can't help wondering, what the client is hoping to get out of such a long engagement. And I wonder whether they really know what it is that they're trying to achieve with those kind of contracts.
One of the things that has been said to me before when I've been offered longer contracts is, will you be negotiable on the day rate if this is for a bit longer? And we've talked in previous videos about the idea of being paid per deliverable and fixed pricing chunks of work rather than anything else. But the notion that you'd be prepared to take a lower fee for longer time is probably true. It kind of works in most forms of business. If you're going to purchase something or to commit to something for longer, you'd expect a discount of some sort. But it doesn't work for the client. They think it does because the day rate may go lower, but it doesn't, because there's no ability to say we need to finish the thing that we're trying to do.
Indeed.
And that bothers me.
Yeah, likewise. I think as we talked about before, that time and materials model is often well intentioned, but doesn't truly align incentives. So therefore doesn't give the best outcomes a lot of the time. Some of the time it can do. So there's a lot of trust there. There's a lot of luck in getting the right client paired with the right supplier, for those incentives to be aligned. And I think the long contracts can often give clients the kind of permission almost to be a little bit lazy in terms of working out what they're trying to get. I've been in the position, I've seen other contractors in positions as well, where there's not much work for them to do, like month 3 or 4, a given period of time. Oh, it's a bit quiet at the moment, but the client's happy to pay them because they like the work they do, they're good at what they do, and there's going to be some work coming, they just haven't quite figured it out yet. So in other words, there can be a lot of wastage in long contracts, but the client is just a bit scared to let go of the contractor that they found that is good at what they do.
The other point that is often forgotten, and it's something that's probably worthy of a video on its own actually, is you mentioned at the beginning there's an effect both on the supplier and the client. There's also often a large effect on the permanent staff member who is sitting to that contractor. So if I'm, sitting alongside someone who's on a standard grade, standard salary, all of that good stuff, they can make a guess that you're sitting next to them on a perceived higher annual salary because you're a contractor. If within
Yeah.
that, their boss says, don't worry, we're using Andy for a couple of weeks and then he's out the door, or he's here until the end of the project. We just need him to pass on, do some knowledge transfer, finish the gig, and then he's out the
Yeah.
door. I'm looking after you, my employee.
Indeed.
That's lovely. The opposite of that is, we've brought loads of contractors in because you lot are a little bit shit at your job and we need them to mop up after you. Oh, righty-ho. Oh, and by the way, the big project we were going to get you to do this year, we're going to get some contractors in to do that instead because, it's interesting for them. And
Absolutely.
you're wrecking your own business. So
Yeah.
I think look after.
I've seen that many times as well.
Yeah, I'd really like to see businesses looking after their permanent staff. That should be their first job, and probably is if they think about it. How much of the long contract duration, and I did see this as a post on LinkedIn the other day, I'll find it and put it in the comments. How much of a long contract duration is pushed for by the intermediary? So is it the recruiter saying to the client, please, can we have this for longer? Because clearly they're paid a margin on a day rate.
Yeah.
Or is it this notion that you mentioned earlier of with extension, with likely extension? Is that real or is that marketing bullshit?
No, I think the contract extension is, a tool to get the contract signed with less perceived risk. But then everybody kind of knows that, if they do a good job, we're going to want to keep them around. Therefore, that's where extensions come in. And I do think recruiters, obviously, it's in their interests to push for those extensions. And, like other areas of that whole recruitment piece, and that's a topic for 1, 2, or more videos in the future. There are people with, good motives and bad motives. And yeah, I think there is an element of pushing for those extensions, but I think, again, I don't think the client is being pushed into something that they wouldn't otherwise want to do. But I think there may be a little bit of pressure saying, there are other clients that this contractor could move on to if you didn't renew at this point in time. So that, that does promote the model of, rather than like a rolling monthly kind of extension, to let's do another 3-month extension, let's do another 6-month extension, so that the client feels that they've got that element of security again, I think.
Is there, I'm maybe summarising a bit early, but I think that what we're saying to each other is that there are points where the client thinks it's incentivising the supplier by offering some more time, and if it's not the client doing it, it's the recruiter enhancing the job prospect of the supplier. And they do it as well, where they put possibility of transferring to perm, which always makes me laugh, but separate thing.
Indeed.
But I wonder if actually what clients should be doing for the sake of their own staff and for the sake of the supplier is saying, we've got some really good work over the next 36 months. We'd like to invite you to bid on a consistent basis for different bits of work. And the more we know you, the more likely we are to elicit bids from you to do this work. We're more likely to say, please price this up. Here's the next bit. But I think some of it as well can be the supplier to say, listen, Mr. Mrs. Customer, what I'm really keen to do is to deliver early for you. So if you don't mind, let's shorten this. Let's bring this down and make it a bit more agile. And I'd like to talk to you about that a bit more, actually, the concept of agile contracts, which loops quite nicely. But how do we make sure that your projects get delivered really, really well and people are happy, stakeholders are happy, co-workers are happy, so forth? How do we do that? And that's not through elongated contract, that's through finishing work. And I think it's the same thing, but worded differently.
No, I agree completely. I think that's a really good point to leave it for now. And yeah, as you say, let's continue, potentially in the next video, let's talk about this a little bit more, talk about some of those ways in which that can be better structured. So yeah, good to talk. Once again, love to hear anybody's thoughts, comments on contract durations that you've offered, contract durations that you've turned down, and client behaviors that you've seen. So yeah, drop the comments either here on LinkedIn or on YouTube. I'd love to hear what you think.